Welcome to Aim for Truth. We have been giving out the truth for some time now, and there's so much chaos out there that the truth has fallen like apples in an orchard that aren't picked up. So we're going to go over that. Today, we're going to celebrate the crossing of the Delaware, George Washington, because our current George Washington, Donald Trump, is crossing the Delaware to go after those mercenaries, those German mercenaries that were in Trenton, New Jersey, who were all drunk on the night of Christmas. And he crossed a very difficult crossing and surprised them and took them hardly without a shot. Well, this is the victory that's going to happen soon. But we don't know. Just like George Washington didn't tell anybody his plan, Trump is not telling anybody his plan. And all we see is chaos all around us. It is so disgusting and so disconcerting to all of us who have been imprisoned in our homes and controlled by fascist governors extending their reach of their power in an emergency situation, all because of 5 bad pandemic laws which need to be addressed and ended. Instead of adding to the omnibus budget the injunction that Trump cannot use the Insurrection Act, which is illegal. They can't do that. That's just like when they told him that he can't take action in a country or remove troops from Afghanistan. All of those things are complete nonsense. Even if both the Senate and the House tell him to do this, he doesn't have to. Now, we are in the most precarious time in American history. And folks, I'm sorry to have to say, because of the pandemic laws, in other words, because of the World Health Organization / United Nations control of the world, and particularly through China and Britain, because they seem to have more voice at the United Nations than America does, though we pay for everything. What we're seeing is an extinction event. If you're going to wear that mask, you need to look at the science behind it. You're harming yourself. You are entering into hypoxia. Hypoxia is another description they're using for what happens when people come into the hospital with supposed coronavirus 19. Hypoxia, the inability to uptake oxygen. Same thing happens when 5G is put in an area pervasively. Same thing happens when you are given any of the fake flu shots. Same thing happens when you are given now a vaccine, which I did a survey of health workers in a hospital. And the only people getting the shot are the doctors. And I'm told the reason is because they have liability. Someone could sue them for giving them coronavirus 19. Therefore, they get the shot to say, well, I've done everything possible and I wear a mask and so on and so forth. They know that those masks harm them. There have been untold studies in medical facilities showing that masks harm the people who wear them. And even doctors are very cognizant of that when they're in the operating room. So remember, there is no state in the union where you have to wear a mask. Every single state goes by the pandemic laws. It doesn't matter what the governor says. It doesn't matter what the sheriff says. The pandemic laws are determined by the federal government. And only when the National Institute of Health and the Center for Disease Control follow the pandemic laws, which are basically, they must follow what the World Health Organization tells us to. But now we know that they were liars, cheaters, and every speck of advice that they've given on this harms people, not helps people. Therefore, they have to be completely abnegated as a source of help in a pandemic. But they are the ones who call the pandemic. And once the pandemic has been called in America, because our idiot legislators have created these pandemic laws, which we have pointed out in our articles, which basically say they can do anything they want. They abnegate the Constitution. All of the pandemic laws in America abnegate the U.S. Constitution. There is no situation where the government can control for you something that you have to do that will medically harm you, or that you receive something intravenously into your body as an injection or a vaccine. There's no such thing. Plus, there's no such thing hardly, except for tetanus and a few other things, that vaccines have ever worked on. There's always contraindications. So with the new vaccine, the contraindications are so profound, thousands and thousands of people have gone to the hospital or not been able to work. So if you can't do your normal duties, your normal job, after you receive a vaccine, it's called a contraindication, which shows the lack of efficacy of that vaccine. So we are in a stage where this is an extinction event, folks. And the
Well,
extinction event will also be for the Republic of America if, in fact, Trump does not turn this election around.
Douglas, then why does Trump keep promoting the vaccine? That's what people want to know. We know that it is no good. It could kill you. It can maim you, harm you. Why is the president saying, go get your vaccine? Yay, yay.
Essentially, you should follow what he is doing. He's not getting it. He told his White House staff not to get it, and only idiot Pence went out. And after meeting with a secret meeting with the people who are making money off of this, he then gets his shot. I doubt it was a real shot. It's just like Pelosi's shot still had the orange plastic cap over the needle, and they pushed that against her skin and said she got a shot. Okay, so what we're looking at here is, as Mike always calls it, kabuki theater. It's just a big fat friggin' lie, and I'm disgusted by it. I'm also very disturbed that we don't know Trump's plan. But just like I said in the opening, this is the crossing of the Delaware. This is the winning of the battle, but it's only because of secrecy and only because of Trump's leadership, just like George Washington, that we can basically overwhelm the other side because they're basically a bunch of drunks. I love the guy who calls it our drunk, insolvent Uncle Sam, because with this omnibus bill, they rolled it all together so that they could get it by Trump. But what did they stop? They tried to stop him using the Insurrection Act. They tried to not allow him to enforce Section 230 of Decency and Broadcasting Act. They have given money through OPEC. Now, when they say they give money to foreign countries, that is a big friggin' lie. None of that money ever goes directly to the countries mentioned. It goes through OPEC. And OPEC is nothing more than Pelosi and Schumer and all their friends. They simply start a company in Delaware that is never audited, and then they slush the money through that company, supposedly to go to, Jordan or go to Pakistan or wherever. Those are all lies. We've already proven that that money seldom ever gets to where it's going, and no one ever checks up on OPEC money. They are paying this to their own personal interests, and they get a kickback, period, period, period. And if you don't know that, you haven't done your homework. So I'm sick to death of people touting chaotic nonsense. In this particular case, one of the only voices that you could listen to right now is Rand Paul. He stood up and said he said what I'm saying, the $600 to Americans is complete nonsense. At Christmas, the National Defense Authorization Act, they cry, cry, cry. They rolled it now into an omnibus budget to say, if you don't give us what we want, the soldiers in foreign countries will have no money, no food, no bullets, no nothing. We are deserting them. Complete and absolute lies. That is not the way that it works. But what this does is, instead of having a normal appropriations bill through the 12 different committees, that each one comes forward, when you roll them all together like this, which they're rolling almost all of them together, then it will give Biden the ability to do whatever he wants with that money when the time comes, if he is actually put in place. But he's not going to be put in place if Mike Pence stays true to what Trump and he probably agreed, which is on January the 6th, he needs to reject the electoral votes coming from the contested states. Right now, we have multiple contested states, and it doesn't really matter how many are contested. As long as they are validly contested, then those electoral votes cannot be counted, and then the entire election is contested, and then it goes to the Senate to elect the vice president, who can elect Kamala Harris. They could elect Mike Pence, either one. And it goes to the House to elect the president. Well, there's already the votes there. If the Republicans vote for Trump, he will win. So that is probably his plan, but that would mean that he must contest the National Archivist's delivery of the electoral votes to Mike Pence. If they're contested for fraud, then it means that they should have gone to the Supreme Court. So right now we see that there is a case coming before the Supreme Court before January the 6th, which Trump is bringing, which is going to use the fact that Georgia is decertifying. If they can get any state to decertify, those electoral votes will not count. All you have to have is one of those. You don't have to have the numbers that you would need for Trump to win. You don't have to have 5 of the swing states all contested. No, incorrect. So we already see that it's been contested, but we see that the corrupt courts, both the Supreme Courts, the circuit court of the states and the circuit courts and the federal courts in those areas have rejected most of these things, right? Well, that's okay. It isn't up to the court. It's up to the legislature. So as long as the legislature at some point, and they already have chosen separate Republican electors who they are putting up for nomination to be the ones who give the votes, then in fact it is contested. Where did Biden get all that money? Well, we know where he got it. Plus, he's under investigation, he and his son and others that they were associated with. Plus, he's under investigation in Ukraine, 2 separate investigations for the fraud, which we all know about. And then we have the fact that China, as an outside source through sidal elections, intervened. We have Dominion vote machine rigging. We have Optech rigging in the other machines. And so what we have here is one of the biggest events in our life. This is an extinction event, both politically and medically.